Welcome to Kachera House, Kuala Lumpur. We hope that our short time together here will be the beginning of a fantastic journey that will take us all the way to the shores of liberation. The great thing about a spiritual life is that every moment can become an expression of compassion and clarity.
So what happens is, in spiritual practice, it has everything to do with everything about you changing. And the beauty of it is, nothing changes. Why? In spiritual practice, as you do more and more spiritual practice, real spiritual practice, transformative spiritual practice, you will see your mind become light. You will see your mind become very happy, very bright, and you will see that you accept things. The study of the Dharma is not Dharma. Praying is not Dharma. Altars and making offerings is not Dharma. Hanging around a holy guru is not Dharma. Not hanging around a holy guru is not Dharma. Having a great center is not Dharma. What is Dharma is the complete turnabout of our attitude and the way we see things and the way we perceive.
Making this joy-bringing altruistic aspiration a natural part of our being starts with formal practice. This affirms and deepens our connection and communion with the Buddha, his Dharma teachings, and the Sangha, those who practice according to the teachings. The masters of our lineage advise us to start with preliminary practices, which will make our meditation very powerful and the results profound, by creating an inspiring space as well as aligning the body and mind.
Before we start, His Eminence Selm Tuku Rinpoche always stresses the importance of our motivation. We may practice in hopes of finding love or wealth, yet these are short-term happinesses which we leave behind at death. But if our motivation is the supreme one, to gain full enlightenment in order to liberate all sentient beings from suffering, then all the smaller goals are taken care of within the big one. The power of our practice is greatly magnified if our motivation is not selfish, but for everyone's happiness.
This is a traditional altar at Kachara House, but most Buddhists have an altar at home. The benefits of creating a beautiful altar and making offerings are immeasurable. Our wishes become fulfilled and our fears end.
This presentation will show you how to create your own altar at home. People often ask where to set up an altar in their home. If you have a spare room, you can dedicate that space to Dharma practice. If not, find a place in your home where you're least likely to be distracted.
There is no best place for an altar. Simply use respect as a guideline, such as avoid putting the altar next to a toilet or bathroom, as this is considered disrespectful.
After making a good motivation, we begin by cleaning the place of practice.
While cleaning, we visualize that the whole world is being purified. While sweeping the dust, we imagine that all our negative karma and all that keeps us from seeing clearly is gathered up in it. And when throwing it out, we feel that we throw away forever the causes of suffering and our selfish attachments.
In this seemingly simple act, a lot can be learned about spiritual practice. It is always the outer act and the inner motivation linked together that give the greatest results.
Now our chosen spot is clean and worthy of divine guests, and we can invite Holy Buddha into our home and set up our altar. When we invite holy objects of worship into our house, we believe that the real and living Buddha is actually entering our home. Therefore, we make sure our house is at its cleanest and most beautiful. We bring out the best to welcome our holy guest, such as incense, flowers and music if we can, as well as other offerings such as fruits and food, preferably vegetarian. A Buddhist altar contains representations of a Buddha's body, which is a Buddha statue or a picture. Tsongkhapa statues and meditation practice generally bring deep peace, healing of depression, balancing of energies, clarity and prosperity to a home. If we are practicing in the Gelugpa tradition, he can be our altar's centerpiece. Otherwise, Lord Buddha Shakyamuni is most popular. Next, we have the Buddha speech, represented by a Dharma text. Dharma texts may look like simple books, but are regarded as the most sacred objects of worship. They contain the roadmap, the means and methods to attain enlightenment. Any Dharma book by a qualified teacher can grace our altar. And Buddha's mind, represented by a stupa. A stupa symbolizes the enlightened mind. Its form represents the elements from earth to ether in their purified form and activates subtle innate knowledge in the viewer's mind. They can contain relics, pieces of cloth or hair of great masters, blessed rice and so-called money pills, little pills blessed by high lamas.
The more we can see these representations as the real and living body, speech, and mind of a Buddha, the more their blessings will unfold in our minds. With love, care, and daily practice, our altars become a field of sacred energies that bless the entire environment, protect us from negative forces, and bring all things positive towards us.
So, this is what a basic and traditional altar consists of. A Dharma text to the left, a statue of Buddha in the middle, and a stupa to the right. Of course, we can add any number of objects of worship according to personal preference. All these can be moved for cleaning or placed in a new arrangement at any time. Buddhas are not superstitious. In fact, it is good practice to keep the altar clean by regularly wiping the altar before making offerings and prayers. The second preliminary is to make pure offerings. Pure means that the motivation behind making the offerings, the actual substance offering, or the way the offering is made are not contaminated by wrong view or any fault. Buddha Shakyamuni said, "When I am gone, making heartfelt offerings before my image will be as blessed as making them to me directly."
Making offerings to the Guru, which is the highest offering, because the Guru embodies all objects of refuge, is not to make the Guru rich, but to open the way for his blessings and teachings to take seed and grow within us.
The most basic set of offerings is 7 or 8 bowls of water. 3 for our body, speech and mind, and 5 more representing the 5 senses and their objects. Water is the source of life and very precious, yet it is freely available to most of us. What's more, enlightened beings perceive it as nectar. We should obtain the most precious bowls we can. Best are those made of gold and silver, followed by brass and copper. The simplest ones are clay, wood, steel, and so on. When we fill the bowls from left to right, we visualize it as heavenly nectar with rainbows shining from it. The best way to pour the water is to take one bowl in one hand and pour in it some water from a jug which is only used for that purpose. While pouring, chant Om Ahom 3 times. Put down the jug, pass the cup to the other hand, while the free hand picks up the next empty bowl and turns it over. Now we pour nearly all the water from the bowl into the empty one. Again, say Om Ahom 3 times. Place the almost empty bowl on the left side of the altar, and the whole process is repeated until all our 7 or 8 bowls are lined up with a little water in each. Om means enlightened body, Ah means enlightened speech, and Hom means enlightened mind. And when we chant this, it purifies and blesses the offerings. We now fill the bowls, again from left to right, to about 1 grain of rice or 1 finger left to the brim. The distance between the bowls is also the length of a grain of rice. When practicing water offerings, we can take the opportunity to practice mindfulness. Offering too little water symbolizes poverty, the decline of our practice. Too much shows that one will not be successful in one's practice. If the water bowls are not filled to the same level, it shows that our meditations could become unbalanced. We can also make an offering of light. which symbolizes the light illuminating wisdom and a wish for a fast route to enlightenment. Incense is offered for the purification of offerings on the altar. At the end of our day, we empty the bowls of water. Now, starting from the right-hand side, simply pouring the water into the jug, cleaning the bowls with a cloth reserved for this purpose. Never leave empty bowls on an altar. It would be like offering nothing. Instead, they are upturned when not in use, which is traditionally overnight.
This is the most basic altar one can have. According to the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, we can also have additional offerings called the sensory offerings.
The sensory offerings consist of 7 bowls with representations of water for drinking, water for washing, flowers, incense, perfume, light, food, and a musical instrument. These correspond with the Indian tradition of welcoming a guest of honor and the 6 senses.
What we really offer here are our attachments to the objects of the senses, and it is the giving up of attachments that is the path to enlightenment.
The bowls can be filled with rice, semi-precious stones, or nice-looking imitations thereof, and the sensory objects placed on top, which represent the 6 senses. A flower to represent sight, incense to represent smell, a candle to represent consciousness, perfume to represent touch, food to represent taste, and music to represent hearing. These can be fresh or artificial and can be imaginatively visualized.
Generally, anything we find attractive and enjoyable can be offered as well, such as flowers, fruits, sweets, and the first portion of our meals. All so-called outer practices, such as making offerings, enhance mindfulness and generate heightened awareness, the crucial factors in any form of spirituality.
Making offerings sincerely on a daily basis will generate the merit to gain material wealth. However, this should not be seen as the motivation for making offerings. Instead, one should focus on altruism, and the merits accumulated would create the causes for us to meet with the conditions for us to accelerate our spiritual progress. Now we will proceed to take refuge and make prostrations. Fear of present and future sufferings of ourselves and our loved ones on one hand, and faith in the enlightened beings on the other, propels us to seek refuge. We take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. If we are so fortunate as to have a spiritual teacher or guru, we can take refuge in our guru as the embodiment of the 3 jewels. While reciting the formula of refuge, we visualize the Guru in the form of Buddha Shakyamuni in the space before us, about the length of 1 prostration away from us. On a throne, a lotus, and a moon disk. His body is made of wisdom light and holy energy, and light rays made of millions of tiny Buddhas radiate in all directions, purifying, healing, and blessing all living beings, including ourselves. Prostrations are a physical expression of respect and humility towards a higher being. It is also a way of clearing negative karma of the body. There are 2 kinds of prostrations we can make to the Buddha. Firstly, there is the half prostration, which is done in combination with the refuge prayer. Start with your hands together with your thumbs in your palms and place your hands on the crown of your head, reciting Namo Gurube, which means I take refuge in the Guru. Place your hands at your forehead, saying Namo Buddhaya, which means I take refuge in the Buddha. Place your hands at your throat, saying Namo Dhammaya, which means I take refuge in the Dharma. And finally, place your hands at your heart, and say Namo Sangaya. Then drop to your knees with your hands in front of you. Touch your forehead to the ground and rise up quickly. Rising up fast symbolizes coming out of samsara quickly to gain enlightenment. Repeat this at least 3 times. In the full prostration, you repeat the refuge prayers and drop to your knees, pushing your hands out in front of you to prostrate full length with your fingers raised. Touch your forehead to the ground and then push yourself up quickly. Repeat at least 3 times. After the recitation of the refuge prayers and prostrations, you can now sit down to do your meditations and sadhana. The 8-point Varochana posture goes like this. Sit in a lotus position if possible. This harmonizes the subtle energies and symbolizes the immovability of the Supreme State. Otherwise, sitting in the half lotus or using a chair is okay. It is not necessary to torture yourself. The knees should be lower than the hips. The stomach should not be pressed together, and the breath should be allowed to flow freely. Generally, the posture we take should support a relaxed alertness. Place your hand 4 finger widths below the navel, the right hand resting in the left, thumbs touching at the tips. Keep your back as straight as possible. This supports wakefulness and helps to gather the gross and subtle energies into the central channel. Keep your mouth lightly closed, your tongue touching the roof of your mouth. Tilt your head very slightly forwards. This straightens the central channel and prevents agitation. Keep your eyes half closed and look downward at the angle of the nose. Keep your shoulders even, your arms relaxed, your elbows not touching the body. Do the 9-round breathing exercise. Finally, the mind is calmed by focusing on the sensation of the breath, coming and going. Now we recite our personal sadhana, which is a collection of prayers and mantras assigned to us by our spiritual teacher. Or if you don't have that, simply recite the prayers and mantras you like. To help us count the number of recitations, we use a mala or rosary. This consists of 108 beads made of lotus seeds, rosewood, pearls, crystals, and so on. For our friends who are totally new to any of this, here are some holy mantras. Kuan Yin, Avalokiteshvara, Om Mani Padme Hum. Mother Tara, Om Tare Tutare Ture Soha, Lama Tsongkhapa. Mikme Ziwei De Chen Chen Rizik, Dreame Ken Bei Wang Bo Jam Bei Yang, Dupo Malu Jam Se Sangwei Da, Ganchen Ke Bei Sugen Songkapa, Lo Sang Trak Bei Shabla Sowa Dep. Manjushri. Om Arapazanadi. Medicine Buddha. Tayata Om Bekanze Maha Bekanze Ranza Samukate Soha. At the conclusion of every prayer session or virtuous action, or even at the end of our day, we should make a good dedication, merging the goodness we have generated with that of all the Buddhas, and wishing that all beings can share in it and attain enlightenment because of it.
Where there's no Dharma, let it be the Dharma. Where there's a misunderstanding of Dharma, may we clear it. And when Dharma has not grown, may we make it grow. May we take on personal responsibility to burden and to shoulder the difficulties that our body and our speech and our mind has to endure for the sake of bringing happiness to others. May we never run away from burdens and difficulties, mental and physical, that we may be able to shoulder and take on the burdens, that others may be happy, and others may receive happiness, and others will always abide in happiness. When we come across a difficult road, may we always choose the more difficult path and not the simple path. In this life and all future lives, may we never be separated from a perfect Buddha, a perfect master, a perfect lineage, and always please the Buddhas by practicing.